Hi everyone, it's Christine from the Door Doctor, and today we're going to be making a magnolia flower. I've always liked these mesh flower wreaths. I think they're really pretty for spring or summer, and today we're going to do a slight twist on one. It's not going to be quite the same layout as maybe some of the magnolia wreaths you see out on the market, but you'll see it has a very similar vibe to it. And we're going to be doing it not in a cream or a white color like is typical, but we'll be using this very pretty peach color over here. So for today's tutorial, we're going to do this in 3 parts. So part 1 will just be a brief discussion of all the materials we're going to use today. Part 2 is going to be assembling the base of your wreath, so making all the petals and applying them to the wreath frame. And then part 3 will be all the finishing touches. So typically that includes making the center of your flower wreath, covering the back of your wreath, and putting a loop on the back of your wreath for hanging. All right, so for part 1, as I mentioned before, we're going to be using 2 different colors of poly burlap mesh. I always love poly burlap mesh because it's fairly thick. I find it easier to work with. It frays a little bit less than other types of mesh, and since it's made out of this sort of plastic material, it tends to hold up to the outdoor elements a little bit better than, say, fabric mesh. So we're going to be using this peach color. I purchased this at craftoutlet.com, just like the green color we're going to be using. The mesh typically comes in 10-inch wide rolls, and they come 10 yards per roll. And so I cut these usually 10 by 10-inch squares. And so you're going to need 24 of the peach squares for today's wreath. So typically a 10-yard roll is going to give you over 30 squares. So you have a little bit extra in case you make some mistakes. So this should be less than 1 roll of mesh. And then for the leaves, we're going to use an olive green poly burlap mesh, also purchased at Craft Outlet, also 10-yard rolls, also cut into 10 by 10-inch squares. Although for the leaves, if you want a slightly longer leaf, if you want to see it show in the back of your wreath a little bit longer, you can cut these into 10 by 11-inch like rectangles. I cut 6. I'm not really sure how many leaves we're going to use today, but anywhere from 4 to 6 we'll use for that. All right, so for the base of our wreath, I always like using my 8-inch Dollar Tree wire wreath frames. Obviously, you get these at the Dollar Tree. They're 2 per pack, so it's very economical. And once you finish this wreath, the finished diameter will be about, I'd say 17 to 18 inches, depending on how long you make your leaves, okay? And as you can see, I already put a piece of mesh in the middle. I attached it with zip ties, and that's so that you can place your petals all the way into the center of the wreath, and you have some space to put your flower center on there as well. This is number 5 plastic mesh, and I buy this at Hobby Lobby. All right, and then as usual, I like 8-inch zip ties. This is so I can make my petals and leaves and apply them to the wreath frame, so you'll need a bunch of those. I purchased those at Amazon, about 1,000 per package. It is about $18. And then some tools. I have a little hole punch to punch some little holes in the back of my wreath. I have this 3-in-1 cutting tool. This cuts any extra mesh off the ends of my petals. I've already gone ahead and cut a felt circle to cover the back of my wreath. I always like to do that so you protect your door. And then you're going to want to have either floral wire or a couple of pipe cleaners to attach to the back of your wreath for hanging, as well as to attach the flower center. And then for today's flower center, let me grab the material here. We're going to be using this I've become fairly addicted to this glitter rope lately. It's this gold, almost like a champagne colored glitter rope. And you can buy it on Amazon. It's about 1/4 inch in diameter, and it comes in 5-yard lengths. And you'll need less than 2 yards of this for today's flower center. And you know, a lot of magnolia wreaths will place pine cones like this in the middle, or something that's oval shaped in the middle of the magnolia. And so for today, I thought it'd be fun to use the glitter rope. And I have these foam Easter eggs that have been lying around in my craft closet for a while. And so I thought it might be nice to glue some of this glitter rope onto the center of this foam Easter egg. This is about 2 inches by 2 inches. I have no idea where I purchased it because it's been here for just that long, but probably you could find these during the Easter season at Michael's or something similar. And then just have a couple little pieces of cut felt. Usually I use that to attach the pipe cleaner to the back. All right, so, and a glue gun, of course, a glue gun to attach all of this. So let me move that out of the way. So I'm gonna clean up my space here, and you're gonna want to get your wire wreath frame, your scissors, your zip ties, and your peach mesh, and we're gonna start making some petals. All right, welcome back. So it's time to make some petals. We're gonna have 3 rows of petals in total. In the first 2 rows, you're going to be making a Dean Michael petal, which is a traditional sunflower petal, except this time, instead of having it curve downward, as you might typically see, it's going to curve upwards to give that shape of the magnolia petal. And on the first row, which we're going to apply to this second wire, you're going to have 8 petals total. So row 1, 8 petals evenly spaced on this wire. And then row 2 is also going to be 8 petals on the plastic mesh. And then for row 3, we're going to be making this daisy petal. Typically you would use 4 of these in a magnolia flower wreath, but I liked having the fullness of having 8. So we're going to make 8 of these together. So that's coming up next. But first we'll make the Dean Michael petal. So take one of your, excuse me, 10 by 10 inch mesh squares. I'll just place my frame out of the way. And you're going to take the square so that the curved edges are facing up and the cut edges are on the side. And you're simply going to fold this into a large triangle. So take your lower left-hand corner, bring it up to the opposite side, give that a nice crease along the fold, and then you're going to be gathering this petal, this triangle rather, from the one end to the other end of the fold on the triangle. And usually I like to tuck in this corner first and then make 6 gathers from end to end. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And give it a pinch. And as I mentioned before, typically I would do something like this and place it on the wreath frame like that. But for today, you're just going to simply fold it upwards like that, so it curves upwards to the sky. And we're actually going to use 2 zip ties to attach this, so I usually like to do this on the outer row of petals. So if you use 1, that's perfectly fine, but you'll see that the petal has a tendency to go diagonal, and so if you place a second one going in the opposite direction from the first, it'll pull it straight. I'm going to use a second zip tie, opposite direction from the first. And you can see that just makes it a little straighter. So let's make number 2. So again, curve to the ceiling, cut edges up the side. You have the seamed edge facing you. Make your triangle, crease it, have the crease to your left, and then gather along the creased side or along the folded side. Give it a good pinch, shape it the way you like it, and then we're going to place the second one directly opposite the first. I'm going to go through a lot of zip ties, but you can ensure that these petals are not going anywhere on this outer row. All right, let's make sure that's opposite the other one and that we like the way it looks. I think that's good. And we're doing 8 total, so usually what I like to do is place my first 4 petals almost like it's a compass. So we'll do north, south, and then we'll do east, west, and have them balanced in such a way that they're nice and even. And then we'll fill in the spaces with the other 4. pinch that, shape it. And I should say that for this petal, there's a fair amount of manipulation that you do shaping it. So when I cut my mesh, number one, I always use a wood burner, a wood burning tool. I'll place the link for that in the tutorial because it helps to seal these cut edges. But I also like to, after I cut them, I also like to use a little bit of Mod Podge and a small craft paintbrush and dot the cut edges with Mod Podge. And then let them dry for a couple of hours before I make my wreath. That way it just gives it a little bit extra strength when you're pulling and folding, doing all of this gathering. It's not perfect, they're still going to fray at times, but it makes it a little bit easier, especially along this cut border where you're manipulating it a fair amount. All right, so there's number 4. All right, so north, south, east, and west are all in place. Bring that into view a little bit better. And now what you're going to want to do is do the same petal technique and fill in these other 4 spaces. So I'm going to do that separately, and when we come back, we'll have row 1 complete, and then we'll basically repeat the same thing on row 2. Right. So row 1 complete, now we're on to row 2. As I mentioned before, this is going to be a duplication of row 1, 8 petals, same style of petal. The only difference is going to be placement. And so you're going to place each of the next 8 petals in between the tips of row 1's petals. So 1 will go here, number 2 will go there, and so forth. And you're going to want to place it, I would say, about 1 inch onto the plastic so that you have approximately 3 empty squares of plastic, or 3 rows of squares that are, that are blank, so to speak, before you place a zip tie. So let me at least just show you one and go from there. So I'm going to place this guy. Let's see. Yeah, we'll start here. It's not going to be perfect because the mesh is not lined up perfectly. I think I'm going to go over here. In the end, you want the petals to be very close in the center for that last row. I think I'm going to place it right there. So I would say, maybe 3 rows of plastic squares in between the wire and row 2. You want everything to be very clustered in the center when you're done. All right, so same petal technique. We'll just do a couple of these together. And obviously, since you're on the plastic mesh, you don't need 2 zip ties to apply these, just the one. I'm going to work counterclockwise around. Second one will go, I think I'm going to move that up a little bit. I'm getting very fussy about my petal placement. I just hate to have to move things later on. There we go. Shape your petal. And by going counterclockwise, what you'll notice is that your petal has a seamed edge and an exposed cut edge. And so by going counterclockwise, each time you place a petal on top of the last one, the seamed edge. The seamed edge is what's going to be showing, and you cover part of that cut edge. So making it a little less likely that you're going to see fraying mesh, which is always good. Let's do number 3. Make your triangle and then gather. Cross that folded edge 6 times, pinch it, shape it, place it, and zip tie it. All right. And then I usually shape it a little bit more before I, fully commit with the zip tie. All right, so 3 in, you're starting to get the idea here. Looks very pretty. I'm going to finish the last 5 on this row, and then when we come back, we're going to be making this daisy petal for row 3. We're going to be making 8 of these, and then we'll apply it into the middle of our wreath. Row 2 is done, and I'm going to move this off to the side so we can start the petals for row 3. As I mentioned, we're going to be making these daisy petals. I've already gone ahead and made a couple here. You're going to want to make 8 of these in total, so you need 8 more squares of the peach. And what's nice is if you shape these properly, as they're placed in the center of the wreath, there's a nice curve to them. So they're going to be curving upward, and the closer you place them to the center of the wreath, the more it'll help them curve upwards and give you that 3-dimensional shape in the center of a magnolia flower. So it's not a flat flower. It usually has a nice curve to it, and make these properly and it'll give you a nice curved effect. All right, so let's make a couple of these together. So you're going to take a square of your mesh. If I can separate it. Again, curve facing the ceiling, cut edges up the side. You're going to start the same as the other petal by making a nice large triangle, except instead of gathering this triangle, you're going to take the large triangle, fold it again at the midpoint, make it into a smaller triangle. And then usually there's almost like an envelope fold on one side. I usually like to place that on my right-hand side. And you're going to take the edges and sort of scoop them together like they're wings coming together, and then pinch it at the base. It's hard for me to do this to the camera. You're going to kind of grab it at the base of it and then zip tie it. And then when I zip tie it, I actually let this little piece at the base, I let this sort of sit free. The zip tie will go right underneath it. Usually I tuck that in, but for this petal, for this wreath, I'm not going to. It's going to look like that. And that helps it sit upward instead of being flat. It'll be like that. Do another one together. So again, make your large triangle, give it a good fold, flip it into a smaller triangle, have your opening on the right-hand side, grab both wings, bring them together, clasp them at the base, and then zip tie it. And then again, I like to leave that little bit out of the zip tie, shape it a little bit before I tighten my zip tie. All right, we'll do one more. Make your first triangle, fold it in the middle to make it smaller, have the opening on the right-hand side, grab the wings, pull them together, grab it at the base, and then zip tie it. Let me just get the shape down that I want. There we go. And then I usually like my 3-in-1 tool to cut all this extra mesh off. Very helpful to have. I usually have little pieces of mesh everywhere. All right, so I already have my 8. Now we're going to bring our wreath back into view and start placing these. And again, these are going to be placed in such a way that they alternate with the row before it. So if these 2 petals are here, you're going to place this next daisy petal in between the 2 of them. Okay, so you have these little spaces in between the petals from before. And your zip ties are going to be just in front of the edges of these petals. So you're going to try to keep them as close to the center of the wreath as you can. That way the zip ties are pulled in, and whatever flower center you choose to use will mostly cover those zip ties. All right, so I'm going to start, let's see, what's a good place to be? I'm going to place this one right here. I'll show you this afterwards. Take one of your petals. And again, I usually do north, south, east, west again. Even though you already have a guide from row 2 in terms of where to place the petals, I just like to start with the first 4. And then the other tip with this 3rd row is if you snug the zip tie really tightly, it'll make that petal sit up. See how it's sort of almost up and down at a 90-degree angle from the mesh. Let's do the second one here. I'm going to try to pull that in even closer. So get that guy nice and tight. It's the beauty of zip ties. You can really make it quite tight. Now I'm going to do east and west. Let's see where I'm going here. It's hard when it's all peach, but you can start to see how it's curved. I'm going to flip this around again. Never going to be perfect, but I want them to be placed so that the point of this petal is in sort of the divot in between row 2. And I want you to see all of them. All right, so let's stop after 4. So a lot of times you'll see Magnolia Wreaths with 4 daisy petals like this pulled in really close. And just, for this particular size wreath, I liked it with 8. So this is the first 4. You're going to go on your own. I'm going to do this separate from you. Fill in these gaps with the remaining 4 daisy petals. And then when we come back, we'll do the leaves and the flower center and all the finishing touches. So row 3 is now done. Give you a look at that. All 8 petals fit in nicely, and I've sort of scrunched them together. It gives this more of a 3-dimensional effect. I'll turn it a little bit. Oops, let's go this way. So you can see that. And then as promised, you can see the placement of that 3rd row. There's about an inch separating the wire frame from row 2 and from row 2 to row 3. All right. Well, actually, I'm going to leave her upside down because now we're going to do the leaves. And as I mentioned before, you could do 4 to 6 leaves depending on your preferences. And if you like a nice long leaf peeking out from the back, you can cut your mesh into a 10 by 11 inch square or 10 by 12-inch rectangle rather. I just stuck with 10 by 10 inch squares just to give a little bit of green showing in the background. And I think I'm going to stick with 4 leaves for now. So usually I like to place my zip ties for those 4 leaves first, and then we'll make the leaf together. So I'm just going to go around the frame. I'm going to place my zip tie underneath this inner wire, over the second wire, and under the outer wire, like that. And then we'll do the other 3 before making our leaves. So under, over, under. Let's see if this under will cooperate. Yep. Under, over, under. I'll move this out of the way and grab my very curly cut piece of mesh. This is an olive green poly burlap mesh. And so again, you're going to start with the cut edges on the sides, curve going upwards towards the ceiling, and just flip it so that it's in a diamond configuration. And you're going to take the 2 opposite corners, have them kiss in the middle. Almost looks like an envelope fold to me. And then you're going to gather it across the middle, right at that point where the 2 corners kiss. And then pinch it. And to me, it always looks like a bow tie. You're going to give it a little bit of a bend, bring your wreath back into view, place that on the outermost point of your wire frame, and then secure your zip tie. And then when you secure the zip tie, I like to tuck the mesh underneath this bit of wire frame, and then tighten that. Let's move it along and do number 2. Again, diamond configuration, have the 2 points meet in the middle. And then you're going to gather from one side to the next, right at that midway point. Give it a pinch, little bend, place it on top of your zip tie. I like to give it another bend like that before I tighten it. Shape it a bit. You could definitely put, I think, at least a couple more leaves, but this is just to give a little bit of show from behind. Let's do a couple more. So meet in the middle, make your gather. Okay, number 3. And then 1 more. Let's cut our zip ties and flip her around. There we go. Well, there. So you got a nice small amount of green back there. Again, modify as you desire. And that's the center of our flower. So I'm going to put her aside. We'll come back, get your glue gun going, get your foam base, your glitter cord, your pipe cleaners, and your felt circle, and we'll work on finishing our pretty magnolia wreath. All right, let's make our flower wreath center. And as I mentioned before, this is an egg-shaped solid piece of foam that I bought at a craft store. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to place some glue at the very tip of the egg and wrap the glitter rope around until I get to the base. And then I'll leave the base itself uncovered, and that way we can attach a little pipe cleaner on the bottom, and then we can attach the whole flower center to our wreath. So I'm just going to place a little bit of glue at the tip And what I like about this cord is it's fairly pliable. It's not going to cooperate with me right now, of course, but it's fairly easy to bend. So I'm just going to start by curving it on itself, and then stick it on the top here and hold it for a minute until it starts to really attach itself. And then quite simply, you're just going to be patiently gluing and wrapping this cording around your egg. I find that the two most important things about something like this is patience and safety, because as you can see by the Band-Aid on my finger, I sometimes move too fast and I injure myself. So just be careful with the hot glue. Finger protectors are probably a smart idea. Something I don't always do myself, obviously. All right. So I'm going to slow down and hold that for a second. And even though this is a fairly small foam base, it's only about 2 inches barely in diameter. Once this cording goes on it, it should have enough heft, if you will, enough dimension that it'll fit perfectly in that little alcove in the center of our flower wreath. You know, just something a little different. A lot of people use pine cones. I have some beautiful craft pine cones that are covered in glitter, nice deep chocolate brown color. Those would be lovely too. But today we're just gonna go glitter. All right, let's see. And I'll put the link for this in the description box too. I'm blanking on the actual color that I purchased. I want to say that this was listed as gold or champagne. It has some silver in it too, so it's both silver and gold if you look really close. All right, so you're going to keep going all the way down. Since this is not the most mesmerizing thing to watch, I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to finish the rest, and we'll come back and apply the pipe cleaner on the bottom together. So we have it completely glittered. Got some glue strands stuck here, of course, but she looks pretty. And I've gone ahead and left about 1.5 inches blank on the bottom so that you can attach your pipe cleaner to hang it. And here's one I already did. So this is the one we're going to actually use just because it's dry. But as you can see, I just placed some glue, attached my pipe cleaner with a little piece of felt. So what that looks like is we'll just place a line of glue right across the middle, place your pipe cleaner perpendicular to it, to that line of glue, and then I have a little piece of cut felt that I'm going to place over the glue line. So you can press down on it like that, kind of crisscross, and that should hold it in place. Okay, now you have two legs here that you can apply to your wreath. But since this is wet, I'm going to put that to the side, and we'll use our pre-made dry one. Let's bring our wreath back in and wire her in. Hopefully, if our zip ties are close enough, you shouldn't see too many zip ties peeking from the back. But again, best laid plans. I think you're gonna see some, no matter what I do. Let's see. Let's put this as best as we can. I don't wanna do too tight. You might have to, I think, move the center around a little bit to cover as much as you can. You're gonna see a little show through, I think, if you go from side to side. But if it's too much, you can do this. Give it a little scoop. And that's what the center will look like. I think that's pretty. All right. So let's finish our wreath now. So now you have this beautiful base. You need to apply something to hang it. So grab your other pipe cleaner, if I can find mine. I'm going to put the wreath off to the side. And how I usually make my loops is I'll use a pipe cleaner folded first into a letter W. So this is a 12-inch pipe cleaner, fold it in half. You've got a V. Then you fold each of the legs of the V back again, and you'll have a W. And the peak of the W is going to be the top of your loop. So bring your wreath over, flip it over carefully. You don't want to lean on this wreath too much since it's so three-dimensional. You're going to find a spot along the outer frame and take that peak of the W and sneak it under the wire and pull it through until the two legs of the W catch on it, okay, get kind of stuck. And then you're going to take these legs, take one leg, fold it behind the loop to the other side, and then take this leg, go the opposite direction behind the loop, and then grab both of these little loose legs in the front and the tip of the loop right here at the top, pull them in opposite directions until they're tight. And then usually what I like to do is I'll take these little dangling legs and go around the front and under the wire again, just to make them a little shorter, give it another pull. And then what do you do with these? I usually like to stick them underneath the wire frame or the mesh and just kind of fold them in there, wrap it around something. It won't come out. Just tuck them away. Of course, it's not behaving right now, this one little leg. It never does when you're on camera. Anyway, you're gonna get the picture. I'm just gonna stick it in there for now. All right, so now you have your loop hanger, and the rest is just, protecting the back of your wreath. And so I usually cut these felt circles to match the diameter of my wreath frame. I have a little hole punch that I'll link in the description box. I poke little holes around the perimeter of the felt and then just simply zip tie it to the back of the frame. Put a few holes around here. I think I usually do 8 for this 8-inch frame. And place that, and I like to stick the zip ties under the wire, up through the back of the felt, and just go all the way around. So you don't have to scratch your door with zip ties. You can keep it nice and neat looking. I have a lot of customers who have glass doors, and so they don't necessarily want to look at a beautiful wreath front, but a messy wreath back. All right, almost done. And I'm just going to go around and evenly tighten them. There we go. Cut your loose zip ties, and then you can tuck the little clipped ends under, so they shouldn't scratch either. Do that. Let's see. we go. And when you tuck them, it makes it a little tighter, a little smoother. So there you have your felt cover and your hanger. Let's just rearrange our leaves a little bit and then give her one more flip around and shape. Yeah, for this wreath, you don't want to press too hard in the middle since that's where all your pretty daisy petals are. All right, well, let's see. I think she came out really pretty. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you love magnolias like I do, think of all sorts of creative colors you can make with this one design. And if you like this one design, hit subscribe to see many more. Have a good day.